Right, welcome to the Architectural Site Control Commission meeting for Monday, the 13th of March, 2023. First, we'll have roll call.
Commissioner Sill.
Here.
Commissioner Chung.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah.
All right. Got baby quorum. So we're now opening up the public comment section during oral communications, and this is the chance for anyone who wants to speak about things that are not on our agenda this evening. So do we have anyone?
Yes, we have a hand up. Caroline Vertonghen.
Right, Carolyn.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to let you know that communication through phone, accessing the Zoom meeting, for some reason, the coordinations are not accurate. We cannot access it. So I'm very happy that I can join you, the Zoom through my computer. I had raised some issues. I wanted to listen to the recording of the previous meeting, and there seems to be a glitch. The Zoom meeting that provides the recording, we can access it, but then the minute that we access it, it goes to another meeting. Several staff members this morning gave me the direct links, and it happens again. So I apologize. There was several issues raised at the last meeting, and then the minutes report that the planning department is going to consider some update on the cold water. If I can remind this committee, you have approved the work on 77 and 85 Palmer. I'm just using this as an example. Anybody in Portola Valley who lives on top of a hill is affected by all the additional housing. If you remember the previous RENA cycle, we had the planning department was able to reduce the RENA numbers from 74 to 64. Portola Valley has a general plan, and in order to really strategically and plan further any building, we have to follow the general plan. And unfortunately, with the general plan, there's also data from the utility companies. That expired, not only did that expire in December 22, but Portola Valley reached its RENA numbers in 2018. And since then, a lot of additions and a lot of development has occurred in Portola Valley. Some was ministerial, some, I don't know, I cannot find out how it happened, but that has put a big impact in Portola Valley. So I will finally, because I know my minutes are up, the CUPC demands that cold water gives every residence 40 PSI on water. We have 32 right now. And this has been decreasing over the years. When we moved in, it was 64. This is not an issue that has not been raised. Many residents have been raising this issue since 2015. Why is this continued to be ignored? Our fire hydrants have to have 54. Ours has 51 according to Portola Valley employee, and that was in 2021. I wonder how low it is right now. And we only have the connection from 85 Palmer to the main line. This is not even accessing 77. You have a major problem on utilities, and it's time that, and I hope that you are asking the planning department to follow the guidelines of our general plan, because they have missed those guidelines. It's really important. It's not only a safety, as you probably heard on or read in the paper. Now we have pigeons who die from bacteria. We have told the town there's red algae in our water. There's other chemicals in our water. that
Right.
are not good for the people. I hope this department will enforce or will force the town council to save the residents and start working on upgrades for the utility. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Do we have any other hands up?
Yeah, Christy.
Okay, Christy Corley, go ahead, please.
Yes, I am noticing that in front of your names, it says commissioners. And it would be nice if you get your names in front of you someday. Thanks so much for those new members in our community. I'm wondering why the 2 ASCC positions have not been filled yet. I believe we have accepted applications, yet interviews have not been completed. I was at home trying to listen to the 2 candidates via Zoom, but had to drive down to the schoolhouse with missing the first interview and hearing the second interview, and the other interviews were never completed. This decreases the voices of the people in the town, and there are exceptional residents who say they want to participate and they got in their paperwork on time, and for some reason they're not being interviewed and not moving forward in the process. So I'm hoping you can respond to that. And then I think my comments will come later regarding the application. I did send a letter regarding Woodside's creek erosion at Woodside Elementary School. Behind that, I'm hoping you had a chance to read it. It just came out at today, let's see, updated March 13th at 10:55. So I've sent it to the 3 commissioners, and I'm hoping that others that can read that article. The article is called Creek Erosion at Woodside Elementary School could cost millions of dollars. The district may seek a bond to help pay for the repairs. This was sent to you today, and I'm hoping you get a chance to read it before you're making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Do we have any other comments?
No, there are no other hands up. And for people that are attending, we have 3 attendees on Zoom and 5 people in the schoolhouse.
Do we have any comments from the public in the schoolhouse? All right. Right, thank you. We'll close all communications then and move on to new business and item 1, which is the preliminary architectural review of an additional remodel at 3915 Alpine Road, Alpine Inn. And I believe we have Jake to do the self-presentation.
We do.
Right, thank you. Good evening, Jake.
Hello, good evening. I'll go ahead and share my screen and get started. Great. Thank you, Chair. My name is Jake Garcia. I'm a consultant planner for the town. The item before you tonight is a request for an architectural design review for an addition remodel to an existing restaurant, the Alpine Inn, located at 3915 Alpine Road. The Alpine Inn has existed since the 1850s and is a registered California historical landmark and is listed in the historic element of the town's general plan. The Alpine Inn is in the town's open area zoning district and is a conditional use governed by a conditional use permit, which was first approved in 1970 and most recently amended in 2017. The site fronts onto Alpine Road, and for that reason, it requires a 75-foot scenic corridor setback, which is shown in green on your screen. And the Los Troncos Creek runs across the rear of the property, which triggers a 45-foot creek setback. The creek is shown in blue and the creek setback is shown in red. The parking lot for the Alpine Inn is located on 2 parcels, one which is owned by the Alpine Inn itself and one that is owned by the town, and includes a shared parking lot with Rosati Field. The applicant is proposing to demolish an existing 450 square foot kitchen addition that was previously added to the historic structure. That existing addition is not historic and is of substandard by current standards. So the applicant proposes to demolish the 450 square foot kitchen shown in pink and outdoor bar shown in yellow and construct a 968 square foot addition in the same location. The project also proposes a new 102 square foot walk-in cooler and 106 square foot outdoor bathroom addition at the rear of the building. All areas of the addition are shown in red. The proposed areas of addition comply with the required setbacks and are intended to bring the facility up to code by replacing the kitchen to have code compliant cleaning, dishwashing, and storage areas, upgraded electric and gas services, and fire sprinklers. The project includes some additional changes to the site, which include exterior lighting changes and a transformer pad, which is to be further described at a later point in this presentation. Town staff would like to emphasize the proposed improvements are intended to improve restaurant efficiency, safety, and continue its operations. It is not intended to expand the restaurant capacity, nor does the proposed scope of work require any changes to the governing CUP. We'll jump to the elevations. Here are the elevations, starting first with the existing elevation on the left and proposed front elevation on the right. Next, here are the existing and proposed west side patio facing elevations where the kitchen addition is proposed to be. Next are the existing and proposed south rear facing elevations. Here you can see the front of the outdoor bathrooms that are proposed. And finally, here are the existing and proposed east side parking lot facing elevations.
I'm listening.
The proposed materials and colors present a natural color palette and consist of mostly recycled materials. The siding is proposed to be reclaimed tables and benches with carvings and markings, salvaged board and batten barnwood board, a trim to match the existing historical tavern. The paint color is macadamia color to match the existing colors. There's a flat roof over the kitchen and the sloped roof will remain the same, a Class A composition shingle. Roof equipment on the kitchen addition will be screened with the pre-treated Corten rusted corrugated metal panels. The applicant has also provided a historical impact report, which found that no character defining features of the Alpine Inn will be affected by the proposed project, and the materials and features of the historic resource will be retained. The next slide shows the proposed transformer pad and 6-foot fence for screening. Upon upgrading the electrical service, the applicant proposes a new transformer pad to be located within the scenic corridor setback. Town staff requested that the applicant revise plans to move the transformer from the scenic corridor and away from the town trail on Alpine Road. The applicant team has since revised the location of the transformer to be further from Alpine Road and still accessible by PG&E. And since then, they've also proposed the location that would result in 1 parking space, and the transformer pad will be screened with a 6-foot recycled redwood fence. And here's the proposed location of the transformer pad and the decommissioned parking spot. This slide also shows an illustrative parking plan of both the Alpine parcel and the shared town parcel. At the bottom of your screen is the required parking, existing parking, and proposed parking associated with the CUP and the proposed project. The project is reducing the parking by 1 space and adding 2 horse tether rails and remains in compliance with the CUP. Woodside Fire Protection District has reviewed the project and requested installation of an emergency exit gate on the west end of the parking lot, which is owned by the town. This gate is intended to remain locked with a fire district padlock and only opened by fire to exit cars onto Alpine Road in the event of emergency. Town staff will work with the fire district and applicant to finalize the design and location. This gate may require the decommissioning of 1 to 3 parking spaces. And here's the proposed and existing exterior lighting plan. New exterior lighting is proposed under the eaves of the kitchen addition, the bathroom addition, and the detached outdoor bar, as well as along the front of the restaurant at the kitchen addition. All new lighting is circled here in red. The most recent ASCC approvals for the seasonal tent required the applicant to submit a revised lighting plan for the review and approval by 2 members of the ASCC. The process was delayed due to COVID-19, so the ASCC should review the exterior lighting plan for approval of both the newly proposed lighting and the existing lighting, subject to the previous ASCC review. Of the existing lighting, light fixtures E, F, and G have been revised to better meet the town's exterior lighting requirements and are now dark sky compliant. And staff has advised to revise light fixture F because it exceeds the maximum light brightness allowed by the town. The applicant is requesting to the ASCC to keep light fixture F. The ASCC may wish to consider the number of lights, fixture style, and or lighting brightness of proposed and existing lighting relative to the proposed use. And this slide shows the public noticing conducted for the project. A public notice was sent to all property owners within 1,000 square feet of the project site. No public comment was received prior to this meeting. In addition to the normal public noticing, we've also created a project website on the town's website that summarizes the project and shows previous planning submittals. And there has also been publication to the town's weekly newsletter the 2 weeks prior to the ASCC meeting. And that's it for the staff presentation. Both staff and the applicant team are available for any questions by the ASCC. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. I noticed that I omitted to ask the applicant team to come and sit at the dais. Well, to sit at the desk in front so that if they wanted to talk to us.
Architect and consultant. So if you have any questions relative to architecture or historic aspects or the worksheet that we provide relative to our application, she would be the expert. Otherwise, when it comes to operations, design, our intentions, I'm here to answer those questions for you.
Okay, well, welcome, Ruth.
Through the chair, should we do any commission questions for staff first?
Yes. Thank you. All right, Al, do you have any
I
questions?
don't have any questions. I thought the presentation from Jake was excellent.
All right, Commissioner Chung?
I thought the presentation was great, and thank you. I did have a question just procedurally. Are we meant to provide a recommendation to the planning commission here or make an independent decision?
I think.
ASCC has final authority on this project. It is a site that is well-known, do you know what I mean, and often viewed. So we did want to structure this as a preliminary review, but it would be back before this body for a final decision. It's within your authority.
Okay, good.
Oh, so it's within our authority to make a final review this time?
Not this time.
Okay.
So we would have to come back for a final decision, but we wanted to check in with you and make sure that you understood the project and had a chance to consider.
Okay. And what's intended to occur between now and the final review?
If you have any comments or recommendations for the applicant, we would advise that you take a look at the comments from the other committees. The Parks and Recreation Committee had some interest in discussing this in relationship to parking. So that could be a part of the discussion today, and any other items that you feel like are appropriate, or if you need any additional information for you to be able to make a decision.
Okay. So as far as what's already going to occur as an additional source of information, it's Parks and Recreation.
I'm sorry, I
Or
didn't.
Parks and Parks and You mentioned that there's another committee that's going to review the project and might provide.
Well,
information.
they provided feedback to staff that they would be interested in reviewing this project and providing some feedback. So that's something we wanted to discuss with the ASCC today.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions for staff on this project. I thought it was a good presentation. So we now hand over to the applicant for their presentation.
So we have a presentation. I'm not going to, a lot of the slides are similar to what Jake has. I think, Jake, you have our content that you can put through.
Yes, I will share my screen now.
Do I have control of the screen or is that through you?
No, I can move the slides on your queue though.
Okay, great. We won't drag you through it. So my name is Deke Hunter and resident of Portola Valley now over 25 years and grew up maybe 3 miles down the road and So I'm a longtime resident and been a user of the Alpine Inn for many, many years. Actually, a few of our executive staff for the Alpine Inn are here. Our head chef and a couple of our senior managers are here also. And as I mentioned, Ruth from Page and Turnbull is here too. If you have any questions about the strategy for the new architecture relative to the historic architecture. Without going through every slide, I'm just going to pick up on sort of really, the intent of the project is, as Jake did a great job defining, is really to improve the operations as it relates to our staff, to make it cleaner, healthier. This doesn't change the number of meals that we serve. That's actually post-COVID, that's already figuring its way out. But it's to make the place more sustainable, cleaner. And really, this is our chance to go in and do some improvements to the historic structure. So with Page and Turnbull review, we'll be making some upgrades to the foundation. We'll be adding fire sprinklers, as well as then improving our overall utilities throughout the entire property. The ones that I think have been of most interest, and I apologize, Laura, neither Ruth nor I, we viewed this as our final meeting tonight. We didn't catch the preliminary just because we've been doing this for so long because of COVID and everything. But I won't go through the same presentation next time. But when we went through originally, one of the questions that came from the Trail Commission was to move the transformer, and I'm going to call it Alpine Road, to the north. So that transformer slides to the east to put the proper clearances per PG&E. That's what the bollards are for. The screening is obvious. The service that transformer is fed underground under Alpine Road. It comes into that transformer and then it's underground back to our switchgear. So the overhead lines that are connected to the front of the building, those will all go away. And then we upgrade gas, we upgrade sewer, we upgrade storm. So that site is lucky as compared to a lot of other sites in town. All the utilities are right there. So storm, there's no material changes. Sewer, we now get to have a real grease trap versus what we had when we bought it in 2018. So that's all real straightforward. As it relates to other, sort of less glamorous things, when you look at the historic building, I'll call it a pollution control system. The ventilation system associated with our cooking activities sits on the roof of the historic building. The benefit of building the new building, flat roof, and having that roof screen made out of the core tin, we can then embed all of our appliances and all the ventilation systems onto the new flat roof and redo the roof of the historic structure and get any material utilities off of that. And that's great from a load standpoint. Architecturally, and Ruth could throw her arm up at any moment and correct my statement, but for me, my understanding is we try to add something that is complementary but doesn't compete architecturally. We don't want to add the exact same style of architecture that was built in 1852. So in keeping with the agrarian lifestyle that we all love in Patola Valley, we resourced an old barn and are using that barn wood to do a board and batten trim on the new flat structure. So you'll have more of, recycled barn wood up against, the existing structure as you know it. The paint only goes on the existing structure. Everything on the new structure just remains natural as it relates to that. Operationally, I think I've touched upon that. It's been tough during COVID for all of our employees standing outside in the cold. So this is a real plus for us. I think we've done a great job, the community and our team with our employees. And a lot of people have really struggled in COVID. And we've done well because we've looked out for our teams. At one point when we closed, just to give you some historical context, right after we opened, we closed because of COVID. We took all of our employees and we put them to work at the Boys and Girls Club in East Palo Alto. We built those kitchens there and they're still serving over 800 meals a day. And that's because the whole Alpine Inn staff both trained and worked there. So when COVID stopped, that's why we had employees, because we built that loyalty. So it's really important to us for the people that work in our community. And with that, I think I pretty much hit both the sensitive and the emotional things. And Ruth, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything more.
No, I actually don't unless you wanted a little bit of education about the history of Alpine Inn, which is the next slide. And then the rest of the slides, I think, are pretty much a repeat of what Jake had already presented. But I think it's, you know, I don't know if you realize how rare this little structure is and that it is worthy of being a California landmark structure for multiple reasons. But I think that it's got an extremely interesting history and that the project that's proposed is sensitive to that. And putting together, removing non-historic additions and putting a new addition that can accomplish the program requirements of the project applicant is admirable, but I think it's also admirable the way the applicant has further developed the rural character of the site and that the additions to the historic structure reflect the rural additions in a way that we feel offsets and highlights the true historic part of the site.
Right, thank you, Ruth.
Through the chair, can I recommend, since we have Ruth here and it's unusual for us to have that kind of resource, could you explain to the ASCC, how do you base your recommendation on whether an addition like this is acceptable to this kind of structure?
Okay, yeah, because we usually, Page and Turnbull is we've actually built our practice over 50 years of dealing with architecture and architecture history as it relates to historic sites. You are a generalist commission. Often we present projects just because they're historic to historic preservation commissions. And the historic buildings and changes to historic buildings are guided by national preservation standards and even local standards build upon the national standards. And those are administered through the National Park Service because it's part of the Department of the Interior. And the National Park Service has provided guidance since the late 1960s, early 70s on how to approach historic preservation projects. And that guidance is summarized in a series of guidelines called the Secretary of the Interior's Standards for the Treatment of Historic Properties. And typically it is the standards for rehabilitation that guide the review of projects for their impacts and protection of historic resources. So the architectural historians at Page and Turnbull, along with the application, submitted what's called a Secretary of the Interior's standards analysis that judges the 10, there are kind of 10 rules. And we evaluated the proposed project according to those 10 standards and actually found that it met all 10 standards and therefore provides no negative impact to the historic resource for preservation purposes, but also for the purposes of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you.
Right, do we have any commission questions for the applicant?
I don't have any questions.
Nor do I.
I have one. The light called F, the one that's over the lumens, the wall lights that's on the plan. You've got two close together and then one further away on the side of the car park. What does that illuminate?
So between the fence that delineates the parking lot and the sheds that we store all our material in, there's a walkway that's how we feed, that's how we get into that portion of the building. So a lot of employees there at night go into that corridor. So that's what it's illuminating. So it's really for the service and operation of the facility. It's not to say we can't find a better light. If that's important, we will.
I think she's asking why the two are so close together.
Yeah, also, well, also,
Oh, I think
Yeah.
maybe just because we need more light in that area, but probably what we could maybe do is try to come up I think it's not the question that that light fixture isn't appropriate, it's the amount of
Of
lumens
lumens.
that it's, projecting. So either we would down bulb it and maybe separate those lights so you don't get two together that make it extra bright. But that would just be an opportunity for us to improve. And maybe when we come back with the official, we can delineate what we've done there to correct that concern.
All right, thank you very much. Right, nobody's got any additional questions following on from that one? All right then. So we'll move to comments from the public.
So members of the public on Zoom, there are 5 of you out there. If you have comments, please raise your hand in Zoom. There's 5 people in the schoolhouse. They're all with the applicant team. Okay, we have a hand up from Christy.
Yes, we all love Alpine Inn. And we all utilize Alpine Inn. So thank you for that upgrade that you gave us in the last during COVID. So I just wanted to say that. I noticed the fire exit has a bunch of rocks in it right now, and it concerns me. I know it sounds like instead of rocks, you're going to put a gate, but then the gate will be locked and only opened by the fire marshal. So I'm just picturing if we did have a fire go through here right now, I could not lift those rocks and move them. So there's only one way in and one way out. I would just love to see both ways have cars move through if there was an emergency. So people don't get locked into that long parking lot. And I've mentioned this a few times. I'm glad to hear that they want a gate at the other end, but how quickly can we build it so it can be opened? And how quickly can we get rid of those 6 rocks that are too large for anyone to move in case of an emergency? My other question, on the other side of the creek, it failed at the bridge of Arastadero. So I'm wondering how we're working together with Santa Clara County, if that is the county side, to reinforce the creek where it gave away there and now has been rebuilt on the other side from this location. I would think that everyone wants the Los Trancos Creek to remain stable and not lose any of the banks. So looks like Woodside's going to be doing a bond, but this is of concern for Portola Valley as well, to keep the banks and keep everything stabilized as best as we can. So wondering, maybe not this applicant, but I think the town needs to respond to what happened there. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, I don't think there's any intention whatsoever of going over the creek or through the creek with an exit, is there?
No,
I'm pretty sure it's going from the car park, not over the creek.
that's
into
correct.
Southside.
That's correct.
All right, do we have any other comments from the public?
Any other members of the public? Okay, here's Caroline.
Hello, Carolyn.
Great, thank you very much. I hope you all will endorse this project. These people have, these residents have really done an excellent job. And I hope that the town will use this as an example of a very successful enterprise. And I hope you will support them in any way. and any suggestions that they make. They have been very accommodating, even, the people across the street who were complaining about parking on Golden Oak. Unfortunately, the PPDS didn't do anything, but at least they did something. They have the signs up and they asked their patriots or the customers not to park there. This is very good. We also thank them for putting that exit, emergency exit. And if I may suggest something, use the same code that we have for every gate. The residents who are committed to this community, they all know the gate number. We don't have to rely on new incoming fire chiefs. It's all only a matter of communicating how we as a community can all support each other. And we're all in support of this. So thank you so much for doing this. And we will all support you. So if you need volunteers, you can call on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
A couple more people have joined the meeting. We have 6 attendees on Zoom. Does anyone else want to speak in the public comment? Otherwise, we'll close that section and you will not have an opportunity to speak again. Okay, we do not have any other hands up. I would like to, through the chair, just highlight a couple of the things on the staff side that we'd like you to give some thought and consideration and some feedback to us on. So there was kind of a complicated history of the lighting on this project because we wanted the applicant to be able to go forward with some of their previous projects as they were working through the different elements of learning how to operate at the site and deal with the weather, and then because of the pandemic. So there was a past lighting approval that the ASCC granted, but the final approval was subject to 2 members of ASCC. And one of the most important changes related to that was the use of the string lights and putting the little covers over them so that that light would be downward directed. We do not have any kind of formal interpretation on the books related to those string lights and those covers on them. So it would be appropriate for the ASCC to give us kind of a formal indication that you think that that complies with the intent of our dark sky ordinance. So that's something that we would like to hear from you. Our staff's preliminary interpretation is that that seems reasonable in this case, because it's an important part of the lighting for the outdoor seating area. And there are not very many other places in town where there would be such a thing. But we would like to hear from you in more of an official capacity so we could close out that old lighting request. As staff was working with them through different versions of different plans over the years, we recognized the need for lighting between the fence and the storage areas that we were talking about that the applicant was referring to. I've been out there and certainly observed that, and there is a need for safe lighting for employees in the evening. So that's for sure. The question is, like, how do we best achieve that? And so that would be a good discussion item for the ASCC to give some feedback on maybe spacing those lights or really thinking about what the exact needs are. It might have a relationship to the walking path where the doors are, you know what I mean? And kind of thinking through how do they use that space. But I think lighting is needed there, but we don't want more lighting than they need to have a safe operation. Another issue that we really talked with them quite a bit about was the location of the transformer and the screening for that. This is a challenging thing that comes up in larger jurisdictions pretty often, but we don't have to deal with it here very much because we don't have very many of these kinds of commercial uses. So it is common on a commercial project like this to have to add additional transformer capacity and bring the site up to modern PG&E standards. So that's true, but this community is not used to viewing those transformers. So this might be something, you know, depending on where you're at with it, you may want to ask the applicant, you know, any more, because you can have a little back and forth discussion with the applicant here, what their thinking was and what the options were and how they came up with that ultimate location and proposed screening for the transformer, because this will be something that I suspect the ASCC will hear about later. once it's installed. So I think you're going to want to understand the decision-making that they've gone through to get to this point. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is related to the use of the parking lot. I don't think anyone could be more happy with how successful the business is and what an important community asset it has been for local young people working there, for gathering place, for local serving restaurant. I mean, it's really been tremendous in all those ways. The downside of that is that the town's parking lot becomes very impacted, and the ability to use the field easily has become an issue. And so that's what the Park and Rec Committee's concern was about, is that, you know, here is an application that is related to bringing things up, do you know what I mean, to the best standard. But it's also our opportunity to look at the architectural review and how the site is functioning from the architectural review point of view, and see if there's any adjustments that need to be made. So Howard, as the Public Works Director, is in charge, of course, of all of our town facilities. And so, you know, his team is technically in charge of that parking lot. They've had conversations with Howard and with Jeremy over the years about if there's different options that may be possible. Are there different ways to jointly use that space? So up to this point, we haven't been able to reach a clear resolution on that. As everyone knows, there's a lot of town priorities right now. But as the Parks and Rec Committee was thinking about this, they're concerned that leagues are starting to not use that field in the same robust way. And they want to make sure that that community use of the field is really well protected. So Howard reached out to the chair of the Parks and Rec Committee just to get a little bit of feedback. And they did suggest that, you know, they were hoping that with this application, there could be an opportunity for them to either provide some feedback or for some consideration to be made to think about those parking spaces that are closest to the field and think about some other way to use them jointly. So either designating them as field use or having a schedule where they needed to be available and not available for the restaurant during some hours. So they were kind of trying to think about it creatively and see if there's a reasonable solution. And so the Parks and Rec Committee is interested in giving some feedback on this. We don't have a typical process for this. And so we wanted to get the feedback of ASCC today, as you are the decision-making body, and they could potentially be making a recommendation up to you on that. So it's this is not a clear process that we have, but we wanted to bring it forward for discussion. And then, you know, again, with your discussion, we can have some interaction back and forth with the applicant as well. You may want to hear a little bit from them, but these were the types of things that we wanted to think through and sort out a little bit. And then in theory, a final approval of this project could be, you know, very straightforward with those items being concluded. From a professional planning point of view, the largest hurdle is really related to the historic nature of the building. And they've taken great care. Page and Turnbull is a very well-respected firm in this industry, and it's also been reviewed by Nancy Lund, our town historian. So planning staff believes that we're in very good shape, and that's one of the hardest things to solve on a site like this. And so we're down to some of these details that we wanted to bring to your attention.
Right.
Good.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Well, I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion then.
Okay.
So should we target those things in order and ask the applicant their thoughts on the parking, the transformer, and the lighting of the pathway?
Yeah, I think it's all right if the
I've forgotten one of
applicant has something they want to say regarding this before we discuss it on our end.
Yeah.
Jake, I'm gonna need your help. So if you could pull up the site plan that shows the transformer, it would be great. We'll start there. I may have you enlarge it on your side so we can really, what I'm trying to highlight is where the equestrian trail gate opens, as well as in the location of our transformer on that slide.
Sure. Is this a slide on your presentation you'd like, or is this one that I can share from my own?
Those two will be just fine. We're probably, if you stick with our slides, it might be easier because
Slide 11.
Okay. I will share my screen.
So as Jake pulls the slides up, just a little bit of PG&E 101. Okay, so PG&E 101. Hey, you make your application. Your application is based upon the usage that you require for your property, both in electricity and in gas. PG&E then takes your information, they provide the engineering, and they come back and tell you what kind of transformer you're going to have. PG&E wants that transformer, so come from your power pole to your transformer, that's called primary. So think of your transformer, that green box as your primary. Your primary has to be within a certain distance to the road. And it gets a lot more complicated when it's not. And then your secondary is where you pull it into your building. That's called your switch gear. And then you go from your switch gear, you step down one more time to your sub panel, where all your fuses are at home. So in this project, when PG&E first came to us, we put in what's called a circular sheet. That's like our demand sheet. And of course, they put the transformer right by the equestrian opening in the gate, because they wanted to be able to walk very easily to visit the transformer. And I've been installing transformers as part of my day job for 40 years. And I don't think I've ever seen PG&E visit a transformer, but it was literally like if they could pick one bad place, it was the bad place they picked. And so we got feedback. And if you're out at our property, the parking lot contours right there. If you look up at the property now you see the transformer as it's drawn, it's relocated, I'm going to say to the east from where it was originally. The bar, the line that you see on the drawing is actually just an old bumper curb that's out there. And even then to the left of that is the trail and the opening for the equestrian zone. So by locate, we got PG&E then to move it, and we actually are cutting it down a little bit. So instead of it being, let's say, at 4 or 5 feet tall, it's actually gonna be about a foot lower. So we're gonna cut it down. We built our pad, and while this says a redwood fence around it, we probably should take our old barnwood that we're putting on the building and use the barnwood to mask it. So for PG&E, what happens is you have to have 3 feet of clearance on 3 out of the 4 sides, and then you have to have additional clearance so they could, if they ever had to service it. So we took the transformer away from the equestrian path, moved it down and to the right. We can't go further right, because then that's where our culvert opens up. So I've gone as far to the east as I could go. I've cut it in as best I could, and then we'll trench underground to go all the way back. You can see back by the bathrooms on the right-hand side of the site plan is where the switchgear is, and then our sub panel will be over there. So that's how we picked that location. We further minimized it. If PG&E had their way, the mouth of it would be facing the street because that's easier for them to service it that way, but we do have a parking lot, and therefore we were able to rotate it, and we got their permission to do that. All these things, just to give you an idea, if you said, we hate your transformer, move it back to where it was, that would add 1.5 years to get the transformer. To get the switchgear, unrelated to PG&E, this is not your problem, it's just our problem. It's about 1 year and 2 months to get switchgear these days. So this backlog, so we're hoping that what we came up with to solve this problem fits your needs and our needs, because it will put this project off, almost another 1.5 years if we had to change that. So that's the logic of it. We got it away from the horse trail. We went as far to the east as we could before we hit the storm drain. We embedded it, and then we cladded it, and we worked with our PG&E rep to rotate it so we could get the doors or the opening face of it away from Alpine Road.
And am I right in thinking that PG&E would not be amenable to it being closer to the structure? They want it out by the road.
There's a distance here. The problem is it would still end up like right by our historic tree. So where it's nested now, we think from a sightline standpoint, it's great because we have fencing there, and there's an oak tree to the side of us, and you won't see it. My professional opinion is when we do at this part of the project, these things stand out like this. And when they're actually built in the context of everything else, they melt away. So I appreciate the public comment to it and the concern from planning staff. And that's why this is in a better location, because planning staff flagged it, but this is the appropriate location for it now. In my professional opinion, whatever that's worth.
The service to the site previously was via a transformer that was up on the pole?
Yeah, so what that's called weatherhead. So weatherhead is where you come straight from the pole and you see it strung right into the facade of the building. And then there's a conduit that runs behind the fascia there and then stubs into the back of the building. So that's the lowest form as far as quality of power and safety and risk as it relates to fire or any other incident. So getting that off the building is primary.
That would, it would be an actual improvement on the fire safety for anybody that,
So all the way
anybody that
around.
asks, right? And I do remember seeing, because I think in the pictures of the front of the building, you currently have wires going.
Yeah, they're,
Yeah, right now,
Those are
it's,
quite-
it'll be a big improvement, yeah.
so to do nothing, the wires stay up there. So it's, and plus there's really not that much electricity coming through those wires. One day we want to serve milkshakes, but we don't have enough electricity. That's how we quantify how much power we have at the Alpine Inn. The second question was on the lights. I think the best thing for us to do is, now that you've highlighted and Laura was very descriptive, let us come back and just show you, a new cut sheet for that light and in that location, giving you the lumens that go with it, just for that one area.
Yeah.
I think we did, Alan, I think one of you noticed.
Yeah, we walked back in there. I mean,
Yeah.
To me, that's kind of a tight space. I'm all in favor of having lots of light back there so that you can do your job. The question in my mind is, does it make sense to have two lights right next to each other, or is there a better way to spread them out? But I think that you all should have plenty of light back there. It seems to me like that is not a place to cut corners.
No,
I agree. And so instead of guessing, I'm hearing the comment loud and clear. Let us give you a better detail on that. It's pretty, it's fluid out there at times. So maybe one light broke and they piggybacked, a light onto it because of something, but it makes sense that it should be proximate to a door opening. It makes, sense that we should have enough lighting that people feel safe.
Right.
Going back and doing their job. And we need to be sensitive to the dark sky priorities of the town. And we should be able to manage all of those and just give you that information. That shouldn't be mysterious. But the other thing you did, one of you pointed out, we did have a couple of our cafe lights that were missing our caps. Those caps, literally we have to buy them in onesies and twosies on eBay. So that's why it's not a standard thing. We don't go to Home Depot and buy those anymore. So if we are missing a few, it's just because there's been a run on them during COVID or something. But I think I have maybe half a dozen uncovered. We'll get those covered up.
Right.
The last item, Jake, actually, if you could pull up the balance of the parking plan as it relates to, I'll call it City Fields, is actually what we call parking down at the Earthquake Stadium. But at the Rosati's portion of the property, that's great. And then the next slide after that, I'm going to ask you to pull up is just so I can show you the driveway more. So when you're looking,
One before this one. The marked plan.
you have the inlet? Sure, if you would go back one, maybe. Great.
And
And-
Jake, can you zoom in a little bit since we're in a PDF? Yeah, that helps.
Okay. And so there are a couple of things you're trying to manage as it relates to this driveway and as it relates to Laura's comments and concerns by Park and Rec. So let's do Park and Rec first and driveway second, because you can solve one without the other. They're independent of each other. So the circulation is very clear on the property. You circulate counterclockwise today. And what we've done in working with soccer over the last few years is all the stalls that are perpendicular into the soccer field are actually roped off and they say parking only. It doesn't mean that's the only place people who go to drop their kid off to go to soccer or go to a game can park there. So we've already designated those first 10 stalls right there. And that happens to be, I don't know, it was Mrs. Fatonigan or somebody mentioned the stones that are there. That's not relevant to this. They happen just to be there. So cars don't go even further sometimes cars try to drive even back in there. So with soccer, and I'd say, through Jeremy and with Howard, we worked this summer to add more, to do both fire remediation and improve the radius turning out there, create that zone that's designated. So we put our own staff out there, and if you're there for soccer, we'll tell you to park there. Quite often, when you show up for soccer, we have you just park in the general parking lot too. So we always have those stalls. We almost kind of use them as the last person always has a stall. We try to park soccer and sports everywhere. And then if that way, I always have 10 more stalls to go. So we have designated stalls for them. The reason why on the second topic, this is shaded. When you have a driveway that meets a city street, there's a certain amount of grade that you're allowed to have. So working with Howard's office, it's actually pretty straightforward. You just go to the traffic handbook. So why you see that shaded is because we're adding a little bit more rock to start to build that elevation up. And if we ended up having a driveway, we would suggest, no difference to us, is we would change our rotation from counterclockwise to clockwise, because that way, if a car, I'm gonna stand up if it's okay. The car was driving out. And not have to reset the hard right hand turn. That's why we would change the circulation. But since we have attendants out there, we would show people how to do it. We would retrain the public on how to do it, probably even in advance of doing this. It's in that location versus maybe a little further to the left or further to the right. There's a couple of things. You have equestrian easement, you have a pedestrian easement, you have trying to get to a pretty flat grade as we meet Alpine Road, so people have clear sight lines into the property. So with a lot of engineering, that's why that location versus 5 feet left or 5 feet right. We're chasing some trees. You can see there's a couple of scrub trees, pine trees that are out there. Those are the X's. Those are the 2 trees that would need to be removed. They're not heritage oaks. They're something.
Monterey pines, are they?
And our pines. So that's the purpose of that. So I can leave the rocks because that keeps people from trying to creep in between that parking zone and the fence. That's what those rocks, I think Parks and Rec put them out there, not necessarily our rocks, but it's to deter people from kind of going off the parking right up there. And then this driveway here is designed then to meet Alpine Road and meet typical traffic engineering standards. So I'm not saying that Howard has signed off on this, not by a long shot, but by our civil engineers that we use and the town's engineer professionals have been working on this plan. And that's how we came up with that design.
So I would think with Parks and Rec though, that their main concern is whether or not the people that are the parents that are dropping off children or coaches or whatever have enough parking spaces to use when they need it. But would that be, is that 14? Are there 2 fields there? I can't remember.
There's only one field there
So 2
generally, but
teams.
sometimes they have practices where they have more people there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think they'd have been playing as much in the last couple of years, would they?
No, it was tough for us when COVID hit. Many of the other, in my opinion, because we did the research, Woodside and Menlo Park all closed fields down. And we had an overloading here at Alpine. Same time, we were the only restaurant open. So it was like a double whammy. Since then, we've worked real well with club soccer to mitigate these problems. Our only thing we ever ask them is, we're just really busy at lunchtime, at noon or at 6 at dinner. So we've actually been able to work the schedule out pretty well. And with Jeremy, it's not fair because he's not here, but we started to build sort of this nested parking for the field over and above what we're using the parking lot for. So if there wasn't parking, there would be parking. Whether 10 is the right number or it needs to be 14, it's a rounding error for us. So we can try this. If they want more, we can rope off more. That's why having our attendant out there makes this work. So you're greeted by an attendant when you come in at the main driveway. You're greeted by somebody at this portion of the property. I think not at this approval stage, but subsequent to what we're trying to do to improve the buildings, that in a larger context, a right in, right out driveway. So you drop your kids off, you can just go right back out. And that really accommodates people that are coming from Menlo Park and Palo Alto who are going back down Alpine Road. So for us, we have this condition as part of a safety measure, but there may be an opportunity if, Planning Commission and Council want to really mitigate the traffic out there by adding, a full-time second driveway. I don't want to bog this application down with that, but it is something that we, if you read the written record, something we've been advocating for a while.
Right. So that would be the one that the fire department are currently requesting.
Yes,
So you're
this would double
thinking-
it as an EVA, as I call it an EVA. They just want a second exit to get cars out if there was ever an emergency.
So that would mean it wasn't locked all the time by the fire department.
I think the fire department, my understanding of this current condition as
Is
it's
that they
requested
want-
in this application is that they want it built and locked off.
Yeah.
And not, and then
Not
I
open.
think if you want to move it higher up the food chain as to a driveway status, that would require a subsequent application and public, comment.
Right. But the majority of that car park does belong to the town, doesn't it? And then goes with that field. So.
Yes,
that's-
so
Yeah.
from a
But you,
historic
don't
standpoint,
you rent part of it or?
we actually, we pay rent and we pay a little percentage rent over and above that.
Right, yeah. So. Okay, but the an application for a driveway there would be something later on and probably planning commission, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be later on. It would probably ultimately be a council decision, but we would need to come up with the right procedure for it. But there's been, just back and forth and, conversation about what would be best and at what time. So we agreed that now is not the best time to deal with this driveway right here. They've lined up a lot of pieces to be able to get to this point in their project.
Yeah.
So we don't want to hold them up from doing this, which is something they've intended to do some version of this project since they purchased the property. So we want to make sure that that can all go forward. If you've got any thoughts about any of this that you want me to just carry back into town staff, that's unrelated to their application today, I'm happy to do that as well.
Yeah.
And I think, we have to think a little bit about how we're going to address some of these parking issues. And maybe we just need a little team to get together and work on this a little bit and make sure that we've got all the issues covered.
Yeah, I'm just cognizant of, in amongst all the many arguments last year on the PV forum, one of them they kept saying, well, if you're going to argue about this, this and this, what about the parking at Risotti's? Because there's always people. And then, I think it's nowhere near as bad as it was when you initially opened, but when you had cars parked up Golden Oak and down a Rastradero, then it was quite dangerous. But I do remember people sort of commenting about a better, is there a better way? And it sounds to me like a second driveway might be a later down the line.
Yeah. Later down.
Yeah, I think it's clear that there's an opportunity here for the town, both for the field as an amenity and for Zatz as an amenity. To create a safer situation for everybody. I mean, it's not fair for the people who want to use the field, and it's not fair to Zatz and their customers to have to brave traffic in the way that I know I've seen. I don't know the extent to which we can put it to the town, because it's obviously doesn't seem appropriate for us to put it to the applicant on this shared resource on this application, but to somehow put it to the town with some level of urgency relative to all the other things that are urgent.
Well, urgency is going to be decided by council. I can tell you that, because there's nothing that is not urgent right now.
Well,
I mean, I think this falls within some sort of public safety category as well.
we could
To
just,
improve the parking situation here and significantly improve the number of spots, because it's not a matter of a few cars here.
No.
It's a lot.
we could put a recommendation along with our notes just for it to be considered at some point in the near future
Mhm.
as regards safety and accessibility for everyone who wants to use that parking lot.
Yeah, you definitely could.
Yeah.
And so you're separating, the application that's in front of you, but you're reflecting back your thoughts after considering this application. So that would be very appropriate for your commission to do that. So I think in terms of the Parks and Rec, their concerns and the use of the field, I would like to see some additional conversation happen before you take a final action on
Right, I would
this.
like to hear from them just to get their take on, Zeke described a process that sounds good to me. And what's their take on how well that works now? Is that something that they can live with for a while, or they feel like, no, there needs to be some change very quickly? So it would be good to at least get their take on
Yeah.
where things stand.
This is chairs Patty Doos, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So process wise, what do you think if we ask maybe the chair and the vice chair of that committee to meet with the applicant and have a conversation? And then maybe we invite them to the ASCC meeting where you'll consider this for a final action and just kind of get a report back from the committee as well as from the applicant.
Right, and also be nice to just have a few written notes from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When could we, really appreciate everybody's time. Everything's urgent. When do you think we would be able to come back for our final review with you, so I could then schedule that meeting with Parks and Rec between now and that next final hearing?
For
My
this
take is
group,
it's very soon, because I think
Yeah.
that what's been presented is excellent.
Yes.
okay, so do you think it would be sufficient then to check in with the chair and the vice chair of that committee?
Yeah.
And so that way it could be done very timely.
I don't think that, I'm not of the opinion that they need to attend the meeting.
Okay, and
So
or put
if-
something in writing
If
or,
they put
okay.
something in writing, we
Right.
could have this ready for the next.
Yeah,
Could-
if they
could-
meet with Zeke
sorry,
and
Laura,
then write something
Could
down,
we have
that's
this ready
great.
for the next?
I'm not even
ASCC?
sure we need to make.
Or not?
I don't want to make commitments, do you know what I
just
mean, for
continue.
other committee members.
their responsibility.
We could,
We just need to.
give me just a sec.
Okay, but the only thing we haven't discussed yet is the lighting in the tent.
Right, well, we're still gonna give our comments, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so-
do we need to discuss that amongst the three of us?
Oh, okay. I'm happy to. I mean, Zeke took me through and showed me the lights with the caps. I think they're fine.
Yeah.
To me, they meet what I expected to happen. So
Yeah.
the lighting in the inside area on the strings, to me, is fine.
All right, I just didn't know whether we all. No.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it does
Um,
look like there's tons of them when you look at the plan, but when you're actually
Oh, yeah.
in there in the evening.
Right, the way they use the
it's-
space, the
it's
lighting is
not like-
fine.
Yeah. Not right.
Okay, you, commission have, the next meeting is on the 27th. You have several items already, but you've done a lot of, thinking about this project already. So if it would be possible for the applicant to get in touch with Parks and Rec, we would need to know for sure by the end of this week.
Okay, no problem.
And then if we can't coordinate that, then we would just go to the very next meeting, 2 weeks after that.
We'd love to make 3/27. I got a wedding 2 weeks after that. So we'll shoot for the 27th, and then will you, or maybe Jake can provide me the name and the phone numbers for Parks and Rec?
Yeah, we can provide that for you. And
Have the
then.
names, I don't have their phone numbers, so.
Yeah, so we can provide you that information. So then commissioners, when you're in the discussion and giving any feedback, let us know if you had a chance to review the findings or if you have any thoughts about conditions to we can get that ready since you'll have a lot of items on the 27th.
Is it possible to write a condition for the town?
Oh, we'd love to, Kenny. Yeah, several hundred, I would think.
You can write a condition that the applicant has to do certain actions and initiate a conversation with the town. But no, you can't, the ASCC can't bind the town.
Be nice.
Wouldn't we have different meetings if we could?
Sense political aspirations. Careful what you wish for.
All right, so, well, should we stop discussing this amongst ourselves and go to individual comments now then
Sure.
for the project? All right, Commissioner Sill.
All right. Yeah, I have a very positive reaction to this. The thinking that's gone into it is excellent. The analysis is good. I thought that the impact analysis for this historic preservation was great. I read it through in detail. It was very clear, completely logical, made great sense. I agree with it completely. I think that the plans as drawn up are really sensitive to the whole historic nature, and I think you've done a great job with that. I think it's super that you're bringing the kitchen up to modern standards, and it's great that the restrooms are going to be better. I think that having the wires underground is really going to sort of improve the curb appeal. So I think that's a big step forward. You know, as I said, I don't really have issues with the lighting. I think that the lighting with the caps, the string lights are fine. And the only concern I have is whether or not the spacing of the lights behind the storeroom area is right. I think that the brightness is even okay. From my point of view, they're tucked behind a fence and along a wall. The only people who are going to see that light are the people that are walking back in there and working. So I don't have a lot of heartburn about the brightness. I mean, if you can get it so that it's safe and within the limit, great. But really just making sure that you have something that's very workable from a just functional point of view. Let's see. I think it's great that you're going to be changing the internal area back to give it a tavern feel. You know, I just think you all are doing everything right. I think that it's a very good recommendation. The transformer location, I agree that right now, you know, we draw it into a plan, it's gonna be very visible. I think that down the road, nobody's gonna even notice it. So I don't have any problem with that. In terms of the parking lot, I think the idea of hearing something from Parks and Rec, you know, just like we hear from conservation on landscape plans, doesn't mean we absolutely do what they say, but I think that they should have a voice because this is an important element to them. So I do think it's important that we hear from them. But I think it's a great proposal. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Chand.
I agree with Al. I'm impressed by the proposal. The approach and the design seem appropriate. It's an obvious improvement, both aesthetically and in terms of bringing things up to code, and functionally. And most of all, the clear effort to not just preserve but rehabilitate the building as a historic resource, I think is impressive. And thank you.
Thank you.
As far as the lighting is concerned, I'm okay with the string lights with the hoods. I think that's I think there's it's hard to see what other kinds of solutions are available in that situation. As long as it's kept at ambient light levels, I think it makes sense. And that's not, we've seen that it's not like it's set up to be like a gym floor. So it's fine. The lights in that back corridor, I agree. There's not really, it's so squeezed in there. There's not really an opportunity for a lot of light leakage to begin with. And anyone who needs to be back there for work is going to need sufficient lighting there. It's my sort of dated understanding of lighting design is that bringing the light level to within the design guidelines should be sufficient. But obviously you're empowered to assess the whole corridor and the working needs and how you're going to distribute those lights. As far as the transformer is concerned, I agree. Pulling the high voltage lines any farther than you need to just doesn't seem like a good idea. except below ground. So siting it closer to the pole seems like it makes sense. And in this case, it's a difference between seeing a transformer with screening and the cars.
Yeah, that's
So-
true.
Good point. I'm gonna use that line.
I don't see it as a downside aesthetically to have it there. Regarding the parking, I think it's a tricky situation. I happen to drive through there at a busy time, and I probably see the worst of it. And multiple times I've seen a child run between cars on Estrada. So I think in the shared responsibility for what that situation is, obviously, maybe as a collective, didn't dream of the field and the NZOTs being popular enough to need more parking than that. But that's the truth that's come about. And the town, I think, has a responsibility collectively to solve the problem and adapt to the good reality of how good ZOTS is, and the demand for the field for children to play sports on. So that's why I asked if we can write a condition for the town, because I think this is something that that I think would be easy to try and bump up on the priority list. It becomes just a question of what kinds of projects are we funding and how we can find a solution. There must be a solution for adding a pretty good amount of parking. There has to be.
It's a tough problem. There's a kind of a confined piece of land there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we shouldn't go through and try and have a sure ourselves about it, but and it sounds like it's been looked a lot, but maybe there's something about pushing the edges of
Yeah.
the parking lot.
Just pave over the creek.
Do not say
No,
that.
I'm just joking. Sorry, anybody who's listening.
There's
Yeah,
gotta be
and
something.
the only thing is, first of all, it's bad for the applicant to jump into these things. But so you could, when we get into that conversation, it's more of it's a question of circulation. It's not just number of parking stalls, it's circulation. So a lot of times frustration may not be, yes, it's frustrating if you can't find a parking stall, but if it's the circulation isn't working, that almost creates as much of a safety issue. And therefore, when subsequently we come back and we talk on a bigger scale in the community about a driveway out there, it's improving that circulation, I think, is equally as important than squeezing out one more parking stall, because soccer ebbs and flows, right? And it comes and it goes, and same way with us, right? I don't have a lot of parking demand at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, but heck, at noon I do, and 6 p.m. you bet on it. And that's what probably makes me, all of us here in the room, your number one commercial taxpayer in town. But that's, it is a community. And so I do think with more time working on circulation and then working on parking and then working on the sensitivities to meet what the fields need when they have games are all things that we can really focus on, not necessarily when we're trying to figure out a roof screen and a transformer.
Is that your?
Yep. That's it.
Do you have anything? All right then. Well, as our former chair used to say, he liked being chair because everybody else had said everything for him. But I agree with my fellow commissioners. I like the way that you've thought through everything that you're doing with the plans. I like the fact that you got the emergency fire gate planned in. I like the removal of the equipment from the roof of the kitchen. I like the extension. I like everything. I agree with the lighting in the corridor. I think it was because they were just put next to each other. If they were more spaced out, we could, so obviously, so that it's safe. And the transformer being positioned where it is and the undergrounding, all of that's great. I think from the point of view, because people in town are complaining, and I think the town council's meeting last week put safety as its top priority. I think we should make some sort of recommendation about that being a second driveway, so that that can be studied in, not to do with this application, but that we view that as something that will help with the Parks and Rec side, with children and parents parking and the patrons of the Alpine Inn. So I'd like to see that, but I'm happy with all the lights, with the can lights. I don't think they're obtrusive. So I think we're all agreed.
Great.
And we don't need a roll call because it's not a motion.
Right.
But my goal is to have a
Yeah.
meeting with Parks and Rec before the 27th, and hopefully they'll give you written comments, and you can tell I'm pretty chatty, so I'll come tell you what I thought I heard. I'm gonna come back with a little diagram and show you what the replacement lights are gonna be in that corridor, and then I promise to keep my mouth shut for the rest of that night. All right, I'll say something.
There's something that I remembered that
Okay. Would you like to?
So I recall that you had mentioned, oh, by the way, thank you for making yourself available on a Saturday to meet
Yeah,
with
that
us.
was great.
But I recall it being mentioned that you have carpool spots, and you've added to those carpool spots, and they tend to be filled.
Yeah, so as you come in, actually right by where the transformer is, I may have the number off, there's probably a 6 or 7, 4 passengers or more parking stalls. So what we're, first with COVID, everybody came. And then as COVID started to wind down, everybody came alone. And as people are coming back to work, if you really look on the highway these days, it's a bunch of people driving alone. So what we're trying to do is inspire families, it's really the families that know better, to come down and have 4+ passengers in the car. And by having that first attendant, probably at least once a night, somebody gets out of their car and they're like, we point to the sign. If the person hunkers down, we don't put up a big stink, but we try hard to really lean on, hey, it says carpool parking for passengers. So it's actually been a real successful initiative for us.
That's great.
Once those are full, if somebody.
Ah, wow.
Diet Coke, we don't give everybody.
Well, yeah, there's a
Not
solution.
promoting drinking and driving.
Oh, I wanted to add something as well. I'd really love to see those eucalyptus go.
Some were taken out already,
I know
right?
some have gone, but they're
We've
still.
been cleaning
some there.
them and they're getting shorter. But no, there are 5 pretty big.
They're
Have to-
my bugbear.
It's tough because some of our neighbors on the Santa Clara side like them, so we've been trying to be sensitive to them too. I grew up on a street in Woodside and we have nothing but eucalyptus on them, and we finally, one by one over the last 50 years, they've been falling down. So I would love to see them.
Tell them to watch.
Trying to just take them down, like
Yeah.
every year we take down, it's been more expensive to do it that way, but the neighbors really.
Mm.
Okay, tell the neighbours to watch the eucalyptus fires in Australia. Because they start from the top and it just goes through in 30 seconds.
Actually, be great for the record if you support the eucalyptus is coming down, and then that way when I go talk to Howard about a tree permit, at least I could point to this being in the record. Who do I get a tree permit? from?
Eucalyptus
From my
to take
staff,
down
and
the-
you don't need a permit to take down eucalyptus.
All right,
or pines.
Do you want us to mandate that they be taken down? Like, is that-
No. But it's just one of the, and that would add parking on that
so I'll
side.
put
too.
parking there. I might put some more, native material back in there, just because that road is so tight in there. But if you recommend that, we consider taking the eucalyptuses out, that will give us a little more push with our team. It's super expensive So, but
Yeah, I
don't
guess
want-
we're
we
not in a
don't want
position
you
to
to go
require
into
it on this,
further
but we can, if
costs.
recommendation is helpful, if we
Okay,
want to
so-
take them down, we can do that.
you've got 4 cutters back there, so they're gonna leave 3. The 3 of them, they'll be the first thing on tomorrow's list. Careful what you wish for. That's great. So we're always afraid to walk the line on what to cut and what not to cut. But if you guys advocate for that, we'll start to,
Absolutely.
if not all at once, we'll get 2 out of the 5 remaining and then we'll.
Well, we've got, I mean, there's 5 trees that we just do not want in Portola Valley. Eucalyptus, pine, cypress, and then I can't remember the other two.
Acacia.
Acacia. And so you need no permits to ever cut those down.
Poison oak. It's not a tree.
That's not a tree.
That's
It's a liana, technically. Sorry,
native, isn't it?
it is a native and it supports 57 species of bird. But it's still poison oak. Anyway, right, so I think that.
I think we're good.
Right.
You don't have any other questions for us, right?
No.
Things are clear?
Let's see.
Okay.
Okay,
This has
we'll
been
be in
great.
touch with the contact information.
And we actually, I appreciate you guys coming out on a Saturday too in the rain. So, that
I did want to.
thanks
ask-
goes both ways.
I did want to ask a question about that because is it, could we have visited all 3 together?
No.
We would have had to announce it.
But we
Because we
used
used
to-
to do that.
If you had 7 people, you could have maybe come in 2s, but I didn't
Let's wait
realize.
for commission reports for this.
All right then.
So,
Right.
all right,
Okay,
thank you
thanks.
very much. Do you feel Ruth needs to come back on the 27th or? okay,
No.
great. Her
No.
report was so good.
You can have the evening off.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Thank
See ya.
you. Good night.
Bye.
Yeah, I have to say that, come on down to Santa Clara or San Jose. It's
Feel free to come back on Wednesday night for the housing element discussion
Ooh.
with town council.
If you, wa- if you think,
on Wednesday.
This Wednesday?
Yeah.
I suggest you watch it on Zoom. It can go for 5 hours.
Pretty reliably goes. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you, Jake. You can go on with your evening as well.
Great, thank you. Have a nice night.
All right, so we'll come back to commission and staff reports. Commissioners, do we have any?
I have not been involved with anything
No,
since the last meeting.
no, nor have I,
All
nor has Kenny. So
Okay,
over to
so
Laura.
it seemed like you were going in the direction about asking about going on site together or site meetings.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so right now with our reduced membership, in order for you to go together, it would have to be a noticed Brown Act meeting, like with an agenda.
Okay.
And so we would need to tell
Two
people.
people go, it would still have to be, I
No,
see.
yeah, I think it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we would like to be able to go back to having site meetings. But we're just trying to make it work for everybody's schedules. So we either need to schedule all 3 of you at once and have there be an agenda, or you have to go at 3 separate times.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's the case that we're in for now, and hopefully the council will be able to, appoint new ASCC members soon, because then at least people could go out in pairs, or we could have a site meeting with 3 out of the 5.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
So hopefully that'll be soon.
I was just a bit bemused by it on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I know, it is one of those rules where we just want, I understand all of the intent of the Brown Act, and then sometimes the fine points of it don't always make a lot of sense, but
Yeah.
Well, I
understood-
sort of goofed it up, right? Because Kenny had a time set up and then I just sort of attached myself to it. That was the wrong thing to do.
Well, in the end, like the best case scenario at that point was if we could all do it back to back, which we did. So,
Yeah. Well, I was going to try and get down there for 10 as well, so it would have been all 3 of us,
yeah.
which was at the point at which Jake said, hello.
So I just have a question about the noticed meeting. Is there a statutory amount of time that the notice has to be given for?
So if
does,
it's the town's practice has been, if there's going to be a site meeting, then we include that in the public notice, and the public notice goes out 10 days before your meeting here. And so we try to schedule that in advance so that that's how the members of the public know that they can come.
Mhm.
In terms of like the straight up requirements of the Brown Act, the agenda could be posted for a site meeting, but 72 hours in advance, but it doesn't feel quite consistent with the intent of what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, so that means we need to have that conversation if we want to do that. Is the things decided far enough in advance that, let's see, so the agenda doesn't need to be decided 10 days, just the meeting notice.
Well, then
And the
there
agenda
needs
can
to
be
be an
decided.
agenda,
Yeah.
but the
Needs to be
agenda is
noticed as
always the
well.
same for site visit, right? Walk around and look at the site and talk to the people, right? So I don't think there's a lot of mystery to what the agenda is when you have a site
Oh,
visit.
right, yeah.
Well, the only
But
thing
in
I was
terms of-
thinking was it was a nuisance for the applicant to have to go through this 3 times. Well, and take out sort of like 2 hours of his day because he had to explain it first to Al, then to Kenny, and then.
So this, if it's possible for us to be able to engage with the applicant with enough lead time to settle on a time to make it into the 10-day notice.
If it's going to be the notice meeting, then our staff has to take care of that, has to coordinate it. So if you want us to try to coordinate that, then we could, but are we saying we want to do it on the weekend?
That's okay with me.
It has to-
Um,
that's-
Yeah. I mean, I would like to get back to real site meetings. You know, Zeke was super helpful and everything, but what we miss is we don't have members of the public there, which they have sensitivities that they bring up, and we didn't get it, right? So having the open site meetings where members of the public are there is quite valuable. So to the extent that we can do it, great, you know, maybe we can't do it until we get 2 new members and
Yeah.
it's a little
We
easier to
did
get
have,
things
we
to
did
work
have a
out.
proper site meeting a couple of weeks ago, but I was the only one there.
So then there wasn't a
Did we?
quorum.
Yeah,
then.
that
Right,
was
so,
the-
because Kenny, you can't make it in the afternoon, right? And so we have to have more members to go back to doing site meetings in the afternoon, but the staff is all set up to do that. We just need the additional members so that we can do it. So this is, to us, is definitely a temporary thing.
Right.
How we're doing this.
I mean, my life's not too exciting. I'm happy to do site meetings on the weekends too, if that makes it work, but
Okay, well, we can't staff it on the weekend
Okay.
for you.
Yeah.
So then that would be the only other thing, is we'd have to have a conversation about what the logistics would be.
Right. And are we all available on the 27th? Because we're going to start hitting people's holidays and.
right. Yeah, 27th is not great for me, but I will sort of adjust my schedule and get back here by 7.
Yeah,
I'm
because
gonna be out
that's-
of town.
Because that, well, 6.
What?
6.
Oh, 6, I'll get back here by 6. Yeah, getting back here by 7. That's weird, you know, I was in Utah for a while. I started thinking of this as a 7 o'clock meeting, but.
I know, because that's one of the things, if any one of us is ill, it not only
Right.
wastes, I mean, it means the applicants don't get heard, and then the staff have wasted all their
Right.
time.
But this is,
Right.
isn't this our own definition of a quorum? For it to
Well, yeah,
be-
but if one of
of
us
the
is
5?
sick, the whole meeting has to be cancelled because we'd only have 2.
But couldn't we, as a town, define the quorum as we currently have 3 people on the committee, so for as long as we have 2?
I believe we'd have to amend the bylaws to do that.
Yeah.
So I think if the council's not able to get the positions filled, quickly, then we'll have to consider doing something like that.
Yeah.
We need to encourage the town to do, because it's not fair on the
Do either
applicants,
or.
and it's not fair on the staff, and then it's not fair on us because we can't say I'm ill or I'm away or something's happened.
Right, it'll make it tough during the summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the summer, when people start traveling, if we don't have somebody, additional people, we'll end up missing some meetings, I'm sure.
Yeah, we definitely need to do it before then. Hopefully council can do it
Right.
shortly.
Maybe
Yeah.
we can put it to the council maybe to either fill, or it seems like filling the positions is the easiest solution.
What was that thing you said earlier? What,
Temporarily
request the council
amend
to
the bylaws to,
make the council do something, did you say?
provide a condition for the council.
Which
It's weird.
council member is listening?
The
Sarah.
ASCC is
Yeah,
trying to do that. The planning commission's trying to do it. That's weird. Everybody's trying to be in charge.
Okay, then
Okay.
for
Do that
the
at a
staff
level.
report, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we have 3 council meetings in a row to consider the housing element. This Wednesday, the 15th, Wednesday, the 22nd, and Wednesday, the 29th.
And after the
Um,
29th, in theory, it's going to be approved and get sent on, or I guess not, but
Yep.
the objective would be to get it approved.
Yep, that was the council's previous direction, was to
Okay.
try to get it approved by the end of March. And then it would get sent off. We have to do some repackaging and implement the comments, and then it goes off to HCD.
That's exciting.
But to simplify, well, to say things very simply, I can't see that the housing element they currently put forward is vastly different to the one that was suggested several months ago. Or is that just me?
No, it is substantially similar.
Okay. Right then. Fine.
So we should take any public comments on the commission and staff report.
All right. So we'll open up for public comments.
There are 6 people in attendance, and here is Christy Corley.
Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, I was just wondering who else is present. I know there's a liaison, Sarah Warnikoff, and then it switches over on April 1st to Judith Haskell. So just confirming that we have a liaison from the town council here present right now.
It
That's
looks
my first question. My second question is, I hear a lot that safety is a priority with our, my dog, sorry, with our council. And if safety is a priority, then can we get the rocks taken away? So if we were to have a fire, that these cars can get out quickly. Each car is gas. Each car can blow up. So my goal is to get cars moving quickly out of that parking lot and out on Alpine Road. So I didn't hear any recommendation that, I know you want to do this fence, but it's so easy to put up a temporary fence that can be, you know, opened up quickly, and get rid of those rocks, please. And then I guess you just told me how many people in attendance, and we really didn't hear any feedback on the Santa Clara side of the creek that failed. And I'm wondering, you know, these applicants are renting a space from Portola Valley. So this fire exit is Portola Valley's issue. And safety is a priority. And then we also have the bank that failed right by a bridge, and how we're going to work with Santa Clara in the future to make sure that that doesn't happen when we have increased water like we did. I would think some of this is beyond ASCC and more of town planning and the planning commission, if we have a large creek that's failing on the Santa Clara side. Thanks.
Thank you, Christy. It looks like Carolyn Vitongan also has her hand up. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So I hope you will not approve the minutes. I was not able to confirm the minutes in coordinates with the recording due to the issues that we had. I don't recall the comments that are listed by the planning department at the end. And so I personally don't make any comments unless I review something. So I didn't recall these comments. However, these issues are very important. As I said in the oral communication, the general plan, and I'm talking about the existing general plan that we had prior to 2023, the housing element prepared the housing, the planning department to only add so many more housing, whether it is an ADU or adding improvements to an existing house, but it depended on the general plan and it depended on the data provided by the utility company. Unfortunately, we reached our arena number in 2018, and every other addition was not recorded or it's very vague, and the planning department doesn't want to issue the numbers. But what I'm telling you, the town of Portola Valley has built over its reality capacity on utilities. And that's why residents have issued or have spoken up and have expressed their concerns on a whole array of issues, not only AT&T, but we have no reliable internet, we have no reliable and safe water. We have low water pressure, which has been already reported since 2015, and nothing is being done. You cannot continue to that. And one of the departments has to be or has to take responsibility, because we have the evidence, whether it is oral communication, whether it is written confirmation to the town council or to individual staff members and town committees, something has to be done about that. So we're now into the
Caroline,
next.
but this was for the minutes. This was for specific.
Exactly. Well, if you read the minutes at the end, it says that the planning director mentions that water will be discussed. It should have been discussed in the prior housing element because we had certain agreements. There is no new data. There was data for the last housing element that ended in December, and we built over its capacity. What about the new housing elements? Where is that data of our sewer, of our water quality, of our water pressure, water? Nothing. All they have is data on the new sites, and the new sites are sited by our evacuation routes. They will not be affected, so they get priority. It's
Right.
the residents who have been complaining about every utility company in our town. We pay the taxes. We have expressed our concerns. We want resolutions. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you for that correction, Laura. Of course. All right. Do we have any further public comments on the staff and commission reports?
No.
All right, then I will close that portion of the agenda and move on to approval of the minutes.
Okay, minutes look fine to me.
They look fine to me. I had no trouble accessing them.
Yeah, I had no trouble accessing them and remember Laura talking about cow water. In fact, I wrote it down during the staff reports for the last meeting. So I'm happy to entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of February the 27th, 2023.
I move that we approve the minutes as written for the previous meeting.
A second.
Roll call.
We don't have to do a roll call since we're all back in person.
Oh,
So you can just say all in favor.
all in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody who isn't here.
All right,
Thanks, everyone.
that's great.
Good
It's
night.
Good to be back.